So originally, hockey was just like children were playing it on fucking frozen ponds, and it's not dangerous, so nobody needs masks. Only half the kids have ice skates, the other half are just in fucking sneakers. This is pre-sneakers. In their fucking work shoes, because they work in factories most of the year because they're children. Hitting...
You know, as kids do.
This is very back in the day, alright? I'm not great with time, but back in the day is when this was.
Late 1800s.
Yeah, late 1800s. Hello!
Hello.
How are you?
She's good.
Okay.
Glad to hear this.
Are you returning to us, or are you gonna
Are you hanging
babysit?
out with us or with her?
I'm getting some water for her.
Okay.
Alright. So kids are playing with fucking sticks and a ball on the ice. Whatever. Nobody cares. It's not dangerous at all. You don't need a mask. No worries. Things move on. Hockey becomes a real sport. That's a whole thing. That's a whole other story. But when hockey first became a sport, goalies were not allowed to bend down. So they had to be standing up. They just had to block stuff with their stick. They had like pads on their shins, but that was it. So you don't need a mask because your face is like 5 feet away from where the puck is. And also the puck's not allowed to leave the ice. So no worries. Then there was this whole thing with like hockey was on the east coast of Canada and then it went to the west coast, and on the west coast they made up these different rules where you were allowed to pass forward because they weren't using rugby rules anymore, and blah blah blah, and also like goalies were allowed to get down, but there's no centralized NHL or whatever, so rules are all different. There was this one team from the west who came and played teams on the east, and they like were fucking slaughtered, but that's when they realized like, oh shit, they have different rules on the west, maybe something should change, whatever. So things move along. Eventually we get like kind of standardized hockey rules. Still nobody's allowed to bend down, but pucks are leaving the ice now. The slap shot has been invented long before anyone in the NHL is wearing a mask or a helmet. Women, who are not like burdened by toxic masculinity, are like, hey, I'm a goalie and I don't like being hit in the face by fucking pucks. Maybe I'll wear something to guard my face. And because they don't have toxic masculinity, they're like, sure, yeah, let's do that. So they were wearing like lacrosse masks that kind of cover your eyes, or some of them were wearing fencing masks that cover your whole face. There was one really famous girl who like wore a lacrosse mask because she had glasses, and like people were like, "Oh, my face getting hit, whatever," but my glasses getting broke. No, that's too expensive. I need to cover those. So she had like a lacrosse mask that covered her face or her eyes. And then at one point, catcher's masks became mass-produced. They were selling them in like sporting goods stores, and all the women were like, "That, let me put that on my face so it doesn't get hit with a puck. Pucks are fucking heavy. I don't want that hitting my face." Done and done. Like women were getting shit done. Meanwhile, men were just getting hit in the face and fucking their faces up. Like that was just, they were like, "Oh, you're a goalie? You're gonna have a fucked up face for your whole life." And they were like, "Fuck yeah, I'm gonna have a fucked up face. I'm a motherfucking goalie." Like it was like a point of pride that they were like, "How many times have you had the reconstructive surgery on your cheekbones?" Like 8? Oh, what are you, a fucking pussy? I've had 9. Like that was goalies. And then there was this one guy, his name was Robert Planche, right? Yeah, we'll go with that. Sure.
Looking at me like I know their names.
He was a biggie. Plant? It's either Plant or Planche.
It's not Robert Plant.
Who is Robert Plant's person?
He's a musician.
Oh, I might be getting them mixed up. I don't know if you know this about me. Bad with names. His last name is definitely either Plant or Planche. He was French Canadian though, so we'll go with Planche. I'm gonna be so embarrassed if this goes on the internet and I'm wrong. Anyway, he got hit a bunch of times, and he broke his nose a bunch of times. One time on purpose. Somebody was like, "Fuck that goalie," and intentionally like kicked up off the ice to hit him in the face. And he was like, "You know what? Fuck this shit. I am not going out without a motherfucking mask." And there was this like boat manufacturer in
Oh my god.
who knew his way around fiberglass, and he was like, he watched a game and he saw Robert Planche get his like nose broken for like the 8th time, and he was like, "There's no need for that to happen." So he figured out how to make a mask out of fiberglass, and he like made his kids like sit for casts of the masks to practice making them. And then, because it's the fucking 1800s, he just like wrote a handwritten note to Robert Planche being like, "Hey dude, I know how to make great fiberglass masks."
This is the 1800s?
I don't know, maybe. Or early 1900s.
Probably at least early 1900s, like teens.
This is like teens, if
Okay.
that. Like, this is early. Yeah. So he writes a handwritten note to Robert Blanche, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, I'm great with fiberglass. Would you like a free masks? Signed, Mask Maker." And he sends it.
That's creepy as fuck.
Man.
The mask maker has marked you with this mask.
Yeah, because this guy is like a fucking weirdo. He gives no fucks about what anyone thinks. So he's like, hell yeah, I'll take a mask, whatever, fuck it. So he like calls the guy. The guy, he doesn't. He writes him a letter. He doesn't call him. There's no phones. He meets up with him. He makes a mask, a cast to make the mask, which is terrifying. Like you have to lay and have plaster put over you while you have straws in your nose, like that kind of old timey bullshit. And he gets the cast made, he sends it to the boat maker. The boat maker, like, 8 weeks later, mails through, like, a fucking dog sled back this terrifying mask, right? It's made out of fiberglass. It has these giant eye holes. He painted it skin color so it would be, quote, kind of unnoticeable. It's not a real quote. So it would be kind of unnoticeable. I thought I was gonna remember what he said, and then I didn't. But he painted it like generic,
Quote, kind of unnoticeable.
French Canadian white colored, and it was the creepiest thing I've ever seen. So Scott is like, awesome, this is great. I love not being hit in the face by projectiles. That's my favorite thing to do with my day. So he wears it in practice a whole bunch, but his coaches and stuff are like, don't wear it during games or people will think you're a pussy and no one wants to play hockey against a pussy. Like, and part of my language is not appropriate language, but it's the kind of language that they use at the time. Also, one of his coaches was legitimately like, we can't cover your face. Women won't pay for tickets if they can't see your face. As if women in the early 1900s were like, I want to go see a hockey game to see Robert LaPlanche's face. Like, he's been hit by so many fucking hockey pucks.
Hockey hugs!
Pocky hugs!
His face is
Fucky
fucked up
hugs.
as shit. Like, no one wants to see his face, right? I mean, he was a little handsome, but, like, still, fucked up. So one time, he's playing a game, he gets hit in the face, he goes back, and this is back, they didn't used to have sub-goalies. So, like, if your goalie got hit in the face and needed to go to medical for 45 minutes, guess you're all just sitting in the stands for 45 minutes while he's getting his nose reset. So he comes back out after like 45 minutes after getting his fucking, I think he had his cheekbone shattered. And he comes back out and he's like, listen, buddy, I'm not going out. By buddy, I mean coach. I'm not going out unless you let me wear my creepy ass mask that I have from the boat guy. And his coach is like, you're not allowed. And Robert Planche is like, what are you going to do? Call a backup goalie? You don't have a fucking backup goalie. You only have one fucking goalie. This is the Habs. So he's like, alright, you're correct. I don't have a backup goalie. I guess go for it. So he goes out, he's wearing this creepy ass mask, and he's like, what you gonna do about it now? And people are like, I don't know, hit you in the face. And he was like, have at it. So that's the story of the very first goalie mask worn on the ice. And people were fucking terrified because he looks like a fucking... It looks like he cut the skin off of someone else's face and was wearing it on his face. Like, that's what it looks like. Because the fucking boat maker was like, let me paint it like skin color so that it looks like the most terrifying bullshit you've ever seen in your life. So LaPlanche was wearing it, and everyone was like, whatever. He's like a weirdo. No one gives a fuck what he does, because he doesn't give a fuck what anyone thinks. So he was like, whatever, a weirdo wears it. So the same boat guy, like, the next year... He figured out, okay, instead of a fiberglass sheet, I can use fiberglass yarn, like strings of fiberglass. So he made this terrifying fucking exoskeleton bullshit where it like, I would have a picture if this was what I was planning on talking about, but it's like all over his face like a fucking spider web, and it's terrifying because LaPlanche was like, I can't, like, it's not breathable enough, it gets too hot, I can't see through it. So then, like, a couple other hockey goalies were like, I don't like being hit in the face either, maybe I'll wear a mask. But for the most part, people were like, no, don't do it, you look like a fucking pussy. And again, I'm sorry for my language, it's, you know, that's the general mindset. It's very misogynistic. Again, women this whole time were like, what if I don't get hit in the face? What if I wore, like, a cage in front of my face? And it was totally fine. And this is back when people were watching women's hockey a lot, because this is, like, large broadcast NHL, so people were still watching their local teams a heck of a lot. That's a whole other story. Lauren knows. We watched Hockey, A People's History.
We did.
It's a 10-part documentary series. Highly recommend it. It's on YouTube. So for a while, they had these, like, terrifying exoskeleton bullshits. And then someone came up with, like, plastics. This is a couple years later. And they had, for a while, these terrifying plastic masks that were kind of like the Freddy Krueger... Jason, yeah, Freddy Krueger doesn't wear that.
No.
Jason, what's his name? Jason
Jason Voorhees.
Just Jason?
Jason Voorhees.
I don't
Friday
think
the 13th.
Friday
yeah,
the
I don't think I
13th.
ever
He wears a
knew his
hockey
last
mask.
name.
His
Okay.
name is Jason Voorhees.
Anyway, it was close to that, but more terrifying because, like, the cutouts in it were really weird, and there was that for a while, and it was, like, just in the front, and then they had one that, like, went over your chin and somewhat over your head, which was even more terrifying, but was better for the goalies because it didn't, like, slide around as much. And for a long time, they had these giant eye holes that were, like, this big, because I want to be able to see the puck, but also you want to be able to have your eye knocked out by a fucking puck. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever felt a hockey puck. They are very heavy. Like, I would not want one of those gently lobbed at my head, let alone, like, hit with a fucking slap shot. And by the time we're getting into, like, the plastic covering part of your head, this is, now we have sticks that are made of materials that can bend, so they have the slap shot, which can go faster than a human can physically move their arms. That's really heavy, and I forgot, a long time ago, we got into a part where goalies could dip down onto their knees, and the president of the NHL, because there was this one goalie, I'm going way back, this is not in order, there was this one goalie who, before you were allowed to drop down onto your knees, you weren't allowed to purposefully drop down onto your knees, but if you fell and that stopped a puck, that was fine. So he would constantly be like, whoa, and like fall, and it would stop the puck, and he was like, I just tripped, what are you going to do about it? And the ref kept being like, he just tripped, but he did it on purpose, but we can't prove that he tripped. So, like, he kept doing that. I forget his name. And finally the NHL was like, you know what? Fine. Fucking do whatever you want. And the president of the NHL was like, from now on, goalies can stand, or they can go on their knees, or they can stand on their head if they think that will stop a puck the best. And it's just a great quote. Anyway, so long ago, this has been happening, people get hit in the face. Where was I before I went on the sidetrack about dropping on your knees?
Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, so they got the creepy, like they went over part of your head. They were terrifying. And then eventually someone was like, hey, you know those Kesher's masks that people are wearing? What if we had one of those? So there's, you know, like a metal grate in front of your face instead of a fucking sheet of plastic. And they were like, huh, I wonder why no one thought of that before. Spoiler alert, women in the 1800s were thinking of that, you fucking morons. So then they came up with the compound mask, which is what we have now. Because alongside this development, at some point they were like, maybe hockey players should wear helmets. Just an idea I came up with. So alongside this,
happened in the 70s.
Yeah, helmets for regular hockey players had come to be. So they were like, what if we use the technology for the helmet on the top of the goalies, plus a metal mask on the front, plus more plastic around the neck, because goalies keep getting hit in the neck by pucks and dying. Maybe not dying, but certainly being injured, because again, they're very heavy, they're hit very fast. You could easily get very injured. So now we have the compound mask, which is the, like, plastic helmet and back held on by, like, rubbery straps with a metal grate in front and a compound part on your neck, preventing you from getting hit in the neck by pucks. The end. If I had prepared, I would have had a lot more names. I took notes.
Good job.
Oh, and then there's
You did
the
a
whole
great
thing
job.
about decorating. I didn't. I won't get into details about that, but they used to all just be plain, and then one guy was super fucking snarky, and he kept getting hit in the face in practice. And his teammates were like, stop being such a wimp. And he was like, stop hitting me in the fucking face. And they were like, stop being such a wimp. And he like got hit in the face and he was like, ow, that hurt. And they were like, ah, shut up. So he went off and he took